We're continuing the same subtitle, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, still. Let's talk about then the effects of the Kansas-Nebraska Act, because it does eventually pass. So, it repeals the Missouri Compromise. Effectively, it repeals the Missouri Compromise anyway, because it deals with those territories that are already above the Missouri Compromise line of 1820, as we can see in this image to the right of our screen. Now, slavery technically can extend north of the 3630 line because both Nebraska and Kansas could theoretically decide to become slave states. So this changes the Missouri Compromise effectively, but in the end, they end up repealing the Missouri Compromise altogether. Now, this greatly angers Northerners who viewed the Missouri Compromise as kind of a sacred pledge that was now being broken by the Southerners who just wanted to extend slavery as far as they could. And so the Northerners who had splintered in the Whig Party and the old parties now started to form the Republican Party, which was a little bit more clearly anti-slavery than it had been before, or that the other parties had been before. Also, the Free Soil Party is still going strong in the North, gaining more supporters who are also opposed to the spread of slavery and concerned that the South just wants to spread slavery as far as they possibly can. Now, another effect of it, they also expelled some of the Indians from the land in terms of organizing and trying to get the Transcontinental Railroad. So this angered some of the Southerners, like Sam Houston, who was actually raised by a Cherokee and favored the Indians. But most of the pro-slavery Southerners didn't really care. They were fine with it, even though these Indian groups had been guaranteed this land as long as grass shall grow and water run. So clearly, grass is still growing and water is running in Nebraska, but we're breaking another treaty with the Native Americans there. It's also divided the Democratic Party, North versus South. So Northern Democrats, there aren't that many of them left, but a lot of them are pretty upset about this because they viewed the Missouri Compromise as that sacred pledge. And the South is, of course, for it because it allows them to extend slavery even further. Pierce actually has to call in a lot of favors and give out some other favors to get this bill to pass. But this totally loses him any popularity that he had, and also loses him any chance that he would be reelected. In fact, by the end of his presidency, Pierce is an intensely unpopular president, mostly because of the Kansas-Nebraska Act. So now we have to ask ourselves, is popular sovereignty constitutional? So rewind way back to the Constitution. What does it say about slavery? Not actually that much. It doesn't actually mention it by name. It says a little bit about the slave trade, but not much about slavery itself. This is because the founders saw slavery as an evil that would eventually die out on its own if it was just confined to the states where it already existed. Keep in mind that many of the founders themselves were from the South, so they owned slaves as well. They still viewed it as an evil. Now, we saw the shift coming right around the time of the Missouri Compromise, where the South starts defending slavery instead of viewing it as an evil that will eventually die out, and they start advocating more for its spread. But so far, up until the introduction of popular sovereignty, the spread of slavery itself has been pretty limited. The Missouri Compromise limits where slavery is allowed to extend. Even the Compromise of 1850 kind of limits where it's allowed to spread. But popular sovereignty totally changes the game, because now it's not an evil that should be limited to certain areas, but it's based on a majority vote. And the problem here is slavery a moral issue, or is it just okay? Can people just decide? So popular sovereignty allows the majority to choose if it's right or wrong, so we get kind of a tyranny of the majority start to develop here. And Lincoln is strongly opposed to this idea.